Powerful communication isn't about saying more, it's about saying what matters. When you master this, people listen differently, remember you longer, and respond with deeper respect. This audiobook breaks down 10 transformative chapters that teach you how to command attention, speak with purpose, and shape conversations with precision. You'll learn how to use silence strategically, time your words effectively, read reactions in real time, and deliver messages that land with unmistakable authority. Each chapter builds on the last, giving you practical tools you can apply immediately in your daily life, leadership, relationships, and personal growth. Subscribe to receive a new chapter every day so you can evolve your communication steadily, sharpen your presence consistently, and gain the kind of influence that grows naturally, not through force, but through mastery. Number 1. Listen intentionally before offering insight. Listening with intention is one of the rarest skills a person can possess, yet it is the foundation of real influence. Most people believe that influence begins with speaking, delivering ideas, persuading others, pushing a point forward. But the truth is quieter. Influence in its highest form begins not with the mouth, but with the mind that chooses to be still long enough to understand. When you listen intentionally, you send a message far more powerful than anything you could say. You show that the other person matters. And in a world filled with noise, that is a form of leadership few ever master. Intentional listening begins with presence. Not the half attention given while thinking of your next response or glancing down at a phone, but genuine presence that clears space for another person's thoughts to land without interruption. This presence communicates respect, and respect creates openness. When someone feels understood, they lower their guard. They become honest. They reveal what they truly mean instead of offering rehearsed or defensive answers. This is where influence grows, through the clarity you gain by observing the deeper layers of what someone is saying, what they are avoiding, and what they truly need. There is a discipline to this kind of listening. It requires you to quiet your internal dialogue, silence the urge to react, and resist the temptation to fill empty space with explanations or advice. Most people hear only enough to prepare their own response. The mind races ahead, searching for the moment to jump in, to speak, to correct, to impress. But intentional listening trains you to do the opposite. It trains you to slow down. It trains you to receive before you attempt to offer anything in return. In doing so, you gain an understanding far richer than the surface-level meaning of words. When someone speaks, the message behind their message matters even more than the words themselves. A person may complain about a problem on the surface, but the real issue lives underneath it. They may seem irritated, but beneath that irritation may be fear, disappointment, or exhaustion. Intentional listening allows you to decode these hidden layers. You begin hearing not just the sentences, but the emotions. You begin seeing not just the expression but the intention. And once you understand what truly sits at the root of a situation, your response becomes sharper, wiser, and far more impactful. This discipline gives you a powerful advantage in conversations because it prevents you from reacting impulsively. Reaction is a sign of emotional instability. Response is a sign of clarity and control. When you listen intentionally, you create the space needed to respond rather than react. You prevent unnecessary conflicts. You catch misunderstandings before they escalate. You avoid the trap of speaking before you fully understand. This not only improves your interactions, but also strengthens your reputation. People trust those who take the time to understand before they speak. They view them as thoughtful, steady, and dependable, qualities that elevate your influence naturally. Real influence is not loud. It is grounded, measured, and precise. By listening before offering insight, your words carry more weight because they are rooted in understanding. Instead of delivering generic advice or quick solutions, you tailor your message to the exact situation. People feel the difference. They feel that you listened deeply enough to offer something meaningful. And when someone feels that you truly listened, they are far more likely to listen to you in return. One of the most powerful elements of intentional listening is patience. The ability to hold space without rushing someone, without rescuing them from silence, and without directing the conversation toward your own interests, is a skill that builds extraordinary trust. Most people speak in circles before arriving at the truth. They hesitate, test the waters, or mask their emotions in layers of caution. If you interrupt them too soon, you never reach the real insight. Patience allows you to wait through the scattered thoughts, the awkward pauses, and the emotional buildup until the real point finally surfaces, and it always does if you give it space. In practical terms, intentional listening can transform both personal and professional relationships. In the workplace, it positions you as someone who understands people rather than merely managing tasks. Colleagues will approach you more openly. Teams will work more cohesively because they feel their thoughts are valued. Problems will be identified earlier because people are not afraid to voice concerns. A leader who listens well inspires loyalty, and loyalty strengthens influence more effectively than authority ever could. In personal relationships, intentional listening deepens connection. It reduces misunderstandings, strengthens trust, and allows you to navigate conflict with wisdom rather than emotion. When the people in your life feel truly heard, their defenses fade. They communicate honestly. They feel safe, and that safety becomes the ground where intimacy, respect, and understanding grow. Most arguments do not happen because people disagree. They happen because people feel unheard. Listening intentionally dissolves this tension before it forms. To practice this skill, begin by giving your full attention during conversations. Silence distractions. Maintain eye contact. Allow the other person to finish their thought completely. Pause before responding so you can consider their words rather than rushing into yours. Notice their tone, pace, and energy. These elements often reveal more than the sentences themselves. When you do respond, reflect a piece of what they shared to show that you understood. This not only reinforces clarity but also strengthens connection. Another practice is observing your own tendencies. Notice how often you interrupt. Notice how quickly your mind jumps to solutions. Notice how frequently you start planning your response before the other person finishes speaking. These habits weaken influence by shifting the focus to yourself instead of the person in front of you. Recognizing these impulses allows you to gradually reduce them. Over time, you become calmer, more centered, and more intentional in every conversation. Intentional listening also requires humility. It requires accepting that you do not always need to speak. You do not always need to correct. You do not always need to share your opinion. Sometimes the wisest response is silence. Sometimes the most powerful influence comes from creating space for others to think, reflect, or come to their own understanding. Influence does not mean controlling the direction of every conversation. It means elevating it. The Stoics taught the importance of mastering one's own mind before attempting to influence the world. Listening intentionally is one of the clearest expressions of this mastery. It demonstrates discipline over impulses, openness to understanding, and awareness of the present moment. It strengthens emotional control and cultivates inner calm. When you listen with intention, you engage with the world from a place of clarity rather than noise. In the long run, this skill shapes your identity. People come to see you as someone who grounds conversations rather than complicates them. Someone who creates calm rather than chaos. Someone who listens, not to respond, but to understand. And from this understanding, your words chosen with care and delivered without excess carry a level of influence that speaking more could never achieve. Intentional listening is the quiet foundation of meaningful impact. It is not glamorous. It does not draw attention. But it transforms the way people feel around you and the way you navigate relationships, decisions, and challenges. When you choose to listen deeply before offering insight, you strengthen your ability to guide, influence, and inspire. You gain a form of power that does not need to be announced. It simply becomes recognized through your presence, your clarity, and the consistency of your actions. Influence begins in the stillness of your attention. Speak less, listen more, and watch how the world around you begins to shift in profound and lasting ways. Number 2. Craft concise messages with purpose. Crafting concise messages with purpose is a discipline that sharpens the mind, strengthens your presence, and elevates the impact of every word you choose to share. In a world where people often speak in long circles, drown their ideas in unnecessary explanations, and hope quantity will compensate for lack of clarity, the person who chooses precision stands out immediately. Concise communication is not about saying less for the sake of brevity. It is about shaping your words with intention so the message lands cleanly, confidently, and unmistakably. When you master the art of purposeful brevity, You communicate with a level of influence that resonates long after the conversation is over. Every powerful message begins long before the words are spoken. It begins with clarity of thought. When your thoughts are scattered, your speech becomes cluttered. When your mind is steady, your words become sharp. People often attempt to speak before they truly understand what they want to say, hoping the idea will form mid-sentence. Instead, it dissolves into rambling explanations and wasted energy. Purposeful communication demands that you organize your thoughts internally before expressing them outwardly. It encourages you to strip away the unnecessary, leaving behind only what serves the message. There is strength in simplicity. A concise statement does not need dramatic buildup or exaggerated detail to hold power. It stands firm on its own because it carries direction. A clear message moves the conversation forward. It brings clarity to confusion. It prevents misunderstandings before they have the chance to form. When you speak concisely, you eliminate the noise that often distracts from the core meaning. People listen more attentively because your words feel intentional rather than scattered. Crafting purposeful messages also teaches you to respect the listener's time and attention. Every person you interact with carries their own responsibilities, pressures, and thoughts competing for space. When you communicate directly and effectively, you demonstrate awareness of this reality. You show that you value the other person enough not to waste their time with filler, repetition, or vague statements. This level of respect builds trust. People begin to see you as someone who communicates with accuracy, not someone who speaks for the sake of being heard. Concise communication also enhances your confidence. When your message is clear, you do not need to hide behind unnecessary details. You do not need to persuade with volume or length. You do not need to overwhelm the conversation to feel in control. Instead, your confidence comes from precision. A purposeful message carries a steady energy that requires no apology. It stands firm without force. Others sense this quiet confidence, and in return they treat your words with greater seriousness. One of the greatest benefits of crafting concise messages is that it improves decision-making in conversations. When you speak with intention, you focus on the essential elements rather than drifting into unrelated areas. You avoid emotional detours and stay grounded in the main point. This clarity prevents miscommunication, reduces conflict, and keeps discussions productive rather than draining. It transforms interactions from chaotic exchanges into meaningful dialogues. In practical situations, concise and purposeful communication saves time, reduces confusion, and elevates your influence in both personal and professional environments. In the workplace, it helps you express ideas in ways that move projects forward rather than slowing them down. It strengthens your leadership ability because people trust those who communicate with clarity. A leader who speaks concisely signals decisiveness, preparedness, and understanding. These traits inspire confidence in teams and colleagues. In personal relationships, purposeful brevity helps prevent emotional overload. It allows you to express your feelings or concerns without overwhelming the other person. It builds healthier conversations where both individuals can focus on the heart of the issue rather than getting lost in unnecessary details. Clear communication also helps you establish boundaries without sounding harsh or defensive. When your message is clean, the other person can receive it without feeling attacked. The ability to craft purposeful messages requires intentional practice. Begin by determining your core message before you speak. Ask yourself what outcome you want to achieve. Once you identify the purpose, choose words that support it directly. Remove anything that distracts from the goal. Speak slowly enough to consider your phrasing, but not so slowly that the message loses its rhythm. Directness is not rudeness. It is precision guided by respect. Another powerful habit is pausing briefly before responding. This small gap allows your thoughts to settle and your message to form without rushing. It also signals calmness and control. People associate measured speech with wisdom and emotional stability. By taking a moment before speaking, you create space for clarity rather than impulse. This pause refines your message into something deliberate rather than reactive. Crafting concise messages also teaches you to be mindful of your tone. Even a short sentence can create tension if your delivery is sharp or impatient. Purpose is not only in the words themselves, but in the calmness behind them. When your tone is steady, your message becomes easier to receive. Calm delivery creates an atmosphere of trust, making your concise statements feel thoughtful instead of abrupt. Precision does not remove the human element from communication. In fact, it enhances it. People appreciate clarity because it makes interactions smoother. They appreciate sincerity because it creates connection. When you combine purpose with warmth, your words carry both impact and depth. You can be concise without being cold. You can be direct without being detached. The goal is not to speak less emotionally, but to speak more intentionally. A concise message holds power because it contains only what is essential. It does not compete with itself. It does not dilute the meaning with excess. It stands firm, leaving space for the listener to absorb it fully. This space allows your message to settle in their mind and influence their perspective. In this way, purposeful brevity gives your words a longer life. While others may speak for minutes and be forgotten instantly, a few clear sentences can echo far beyond the moment. This approach to communication also strengthens your self-discipline. It trains you to resist the urge to dominate conversations. It teaches you to control the impulse to overshare, over-explain, or verbally defend every point. It helps you let go of the need for approval or validation through excessive speech. Instead, you learn to trust the clarity of your message and the strength of your presence. Influence is not measured by how much you say, but by how well you say it. A concise message lands cleanly because it is shaped with purpose, delivered with calmness, and rooted in clarity. It does not depend on volume or length to make an impact. It earns attention naturally. When you choose your words deliberately, you step into a higher form of communication. You become someone whose speech carries weight because it is guided by intention. People remember your words not because they were many, but because they were clear. This is the heart of purposeful communication. It is a skill that sharpens your influence, strengthens your relationships, and brings a sense of calm power into every conversation you enter. Crafting concise messages is not just a communication technique. It is a way of thinking, a way of leading, and a way of moving through the world with clarity and confidence. When your words serve your purpose, your presence becomes unmistakably strong. Number 3. Use pauses to command attention. There is a quiet power in the spaces between your words, a strength most people overlook because they are too focused on filling every second with sound. Pauses are not empty moments. They are intentional breaks that reshape the energy of a conversation and draw others toward your message. When used with purpose, a pause becomes a signal that something meaningful is happening. It creates anticipation. It builds tension in a healthy way. It invites others to lean in, to pay attention, to feel the weight of what you are saying rather than simply hearing the noise of speech. Using pauses to command attention is not about theatrics. It is about communicating with depth, clarity, and presence. Many people fear silence because they believe it exposes uncertainty or weakness. They rush to fill gaps with filler words, unnecessary explanations, or nervous chatter. This habit drains the power from their message. A person who cannot tolerate silence often communicates anxiety, and anxiety weakens influence. But the individual who embraces the pause communicates calmness and control. They show that they are not driven by pressure or discomfort. They speak at their own pace, not the pace of expectation. This composure naturally draws attention because it feels different from the frantic rhythm most people operate in. A pause is a moment where your message settles into the listener's mind. Instead of overwhelming them with rapid speech or constant information, you allow your words to breathe. This breathing space gives others the chance to process the meaning behind your message, not just the sound of it. People absorb ideas more deeply when they are delivered with rhythm instead of haste. A steady pace, shaped by purposeful pauses, makes your communication feel thoughtful and grounded. It also makes the listener feel respected, as though you trust them to sit with your words long enough for the meaning to unfold. Pauses also reveal confidence. When you stop speaking for a moment, you demonstrate that you are not afraid of stillness. You trust your message enough to let it stand without rushing. This unspoken confidence commands attention because it signals certainty. People gravitate toward those who appear steady and self-assured, especially in conversations filled with emotional intensity or complex topics. A calm pause can anchor the entire exchange, shifting the dynamic in your favor. The timing of a pause matters almost as much as the pause itself. For example, pausing before delivering an important phrase builds anticipation. Pausing after delivering it reinforces the impact. Both moments work together to frame your message in a way that makes it impossible to ignore. When you place a pause before a key point, you create a sense of focus. When you pause after sharing it, you give the listener space to absorb it fully. This rhythm transforms simple statements into memorable ones. Real influence often comes from what you choose not to say. A pause gives you a chance to evaluate your next words with precision. It prevents impulsive responses and allows your thoughts to settle before you express them. This clarity reduces misunderstandings and keeps the conversation grounded. When you pause, you are not only affecting the listener, you are also guiding yourself. You remain emotionally steady, mentally organized, and internally aligned with your purpose. You choose your words with intention rather than speaking from instinct or irritation. In conversations where emotions run high, the pause becomes even more powerful. When people are upset, they often expect quick reactions, defensive comments, or heated exchanges. By pausing, you disrupt this pattern. You create a moment of calm that disarms tension and interrupts the emotional momentum. This simple act can prevent arguments, de-escalate conflict, and shift the tone of the entire dialogue. A measured pause signals that you are not reacting out of emotion, but responding from a place of clarity. This steadiness earns respect because it shows mastery over yourself. Pauses also help you observe more. In the quiet moments between your words, you can notice the subtle shifts in someone's expression, posture, or tone. These cues reveal what the other person is truly feeling, even if their words attempt to hide it. Pausing gives you the chance to adjust your approach, choose a more thoughtful response, or redirect the conversation to a healthier direction. When you speak without stopping, you miss these opportunities. When you pause, you gain insight. In public speaking or presentations, pauses serve as moments of impact. A speaker who never pauses sounds rushed and unbalanced. Their message becomes difficult to follow because it lacks structure. But a speaker who uses silence strategically creates rhythm. They guide the audience with intention, allowing the important points to stand out. A well-placed pause can highlight a key idea more effectively than any dramatic gesture or loud emphasis. The audience senses the significance because the silence draws their attention to the meaning behind the words. In personal conversations, a pause signals sincerity. It shows that your message comes from a place of thoughtfulness rather than impulse. It also communicates that you are fully present in the moment, not racing ahead mentally or drifting into distraction. People feel valued when you speak with this level of intention. They sense that you care about the quality of the exchange rather than the speed of it. This emotional presence deepens connection and strengthens trust. Using pauses also improves your self-awareness. When you intentionally incorporate silence into your speech, you become more conscious of your breathing, your tone, and your pacing. This awareness shifts you from automatic speech patterns into deliberate communication. You begin to notice when you are rushing. You recognize when you are speaking from tension rather than purpose. The pause becomes a reset button that brings you back to a centered state. Over time, practicing purposeful pauses reshapes the way you interact with the world. You develop a calmer presence. Your thoughts become more organized. Your messages become clearer and more powerful. People begin to perceive you as someone who thinks deeply, listens fully, and communicates intentionally. This perception enhances your credibility in every environment you enter. The beauty of the pause is that it requires no special training or complicated techniques. It simply requires awareness and discipline. When you feel the urge to fill every second with words, choose stillness instead. When you sense that your message needs space to land, allow silence to guide it. When you want others to truly listen, create a moment that invites their attention. Pauses are not empty. They are spaces of intention, clarity, and power. They elevate your presence without raising your voice. They strengthen your influence without adding more words. And they transform your communication from ordinary to impactful, making every message you deliver feel grounded, deliberate, and unforgettable. Use pauses not as hesitation, but as a deliberate tool. Let the silence carry your message forward. Let it frame your words with purpose. Let it show the strength within your calmness, and watch how the world responds when you choose the quiet moments that most people fear, because within those moments lives the power to command attention without force. Number 4. Ask questions guiding deeper thought. Asking questions that guide deeper thought is one of the most powerful ways to influence others without ever raising your voice or dominating a conversation. Questions have a unique ability to unlock clarity, spark reflection, and help people uncover truth within themselves. When you ask the right question at the right moment, you shift the direction of a conversation, not by force, but by inviting the other person to think more deeply than they normally would. This knob of influence is subtle, yet profoundly transformative. Instead of pushing your ideas onto someone, you help them arrive at their own understanding, which is far more impactful and long-lasting. A well-crafted question acts like a key. It opens doors that were previously closed or unnoticed. Many people move through conversations without ever investigating the real reason behind their feelings, decisions, or assumptions. They speak from habit rather than reflection, from reaction rather than insight. But when someone presents a thoughtful question, it disrupts this automatic flow. It creates a moment of pause where the mind is forced to examine itself. This shift in awareness is where internal change begins. You are not instructing the person on what to think. You are guiding them to explore why they think the way they do. Influential questions are not random or surface level. They are designed with intention, rooted in curiosity rather than judgment. People can sense when a question is meant to trap them or expose them. Defensive walls rise immediately, but when your questions come from a place of genuine desire to understand, those walls remain down. The other person feels respected, and this feeling encourages them to be open. True openness is the foundation of meaningful dialogue. Without it, conversations remain shallow and repetitive. When someone feels safe enough to reflect honestly, the conversation reaches depth that ordinary exchanges can never touch. Asking deeper questions also changes the way people perceive you. Instead of seeing you as someone who rushes to offer advice, they begin to see you as someone who cares enough to understand the full picture. This perception builds trust. Trust creates influence. Influence allows your presence to carry more weight without needing to speak excessively. People are more willing to consider your perspective when they feel you took the time to explore theirs. Questions that inspire reflection often begin with curiosity about intention, emotion, or reasoning. For example, asking what motivates a person, what outcome they hope to achieve, or what concerns they might be carrying brings the conversation beneath the surface. You shift their focus from external details to internal clarity. A question like "What matters most to you in this situation?" invites them to connect with their deeper priorities. A question such as "What are you afraid might happen?" encourages them to acknowledge fears they may not have spoken aloud. These kinds of questions illuminate hidden thoughts that influence behavior more than people realize. In moments of conflict, asking thoughtful questions can transform the entire dynamic. Rather than responding with defensiveness or frustration, a well-timed question can de-escalate tension and direct attention toward understanding. When you ask someone what they need, what they are hoping for, or what made them feel unheard, you signal that you value their perspective even if you disagree with their actions. This shift disarms anger. People want to be understood more than they want to be right. When they feel understood, defensiveness dissolves and space opens for genuine resolution. Questions are equally powerful in moments of decision-making. Many people speak about their choices without truly reflecting on why they are choosing a particular path. Asking what alternatives they have considered or what consequences they foresee pushes their thinking beyond the immediate moment. It helps them see angles they might have missed. You are not telling them what to do, you are expanding their awareness. This kind of guidance empowers them to take ownership of their choice rather than relying on your opinion. In leadership, questions are vital tools for developing stronger teams, clearer communication, and more independent thinkers. A leader who answers every question creates dependency. A leader who asks the right questions builds competence. When you encourage someone to think through their own challenges, they grow. They develop confidence and problem-solving skills. Over time, they begin to rely on themselves rather than expecting you to solve everything for them. This creates a healthier environment where responsibility is shared and wisdom is cultivated, not imposed. In personal relationships, questions can deepen understanding and strengthen emotional connection. When you ask about someone's dreams, concerns, or hopes, you show that you care about their inner world, not just the roles they play or the tasks they complete. Many people feel unseen in their daily lives. A thoughtful question becomes a reminder that their thoughts matter. This kind of attention nurtures trust and intimacy. It communicates presence, attentiveness, and genuine care. To ask effective questions, you must first be willing to listen fully. The quality of your questions depends on the depth of your awareness in the moment. You cannot guide someone's thinking if you are distracted or impatient. Thoughtful questions arise from thoughtful listening. When you listen well, you notice what is unclear, what is unspoken, and what is emotionally charged. These observations help you form questions that uncover meaning rather than generate confusion. Another essential element of guiding deeper thought is patience. Some people need time to process a question before responding. Silence may feel uncomfortable, but that silence is where reflection happens. If you rush to fill the space or ask another question too quickly, you interrupt their thinking. Allow the pause. Let them sit with the question. This demonstrates respect for their internal process and strengthens the conversation. Effective questions also avoid assumptions. Instead of asking, "Why do you think that person was trying to upset you?" which assumes harmful intent, you might ask, "What do you think their intention might have been?" A small shift in wording opens space for clarity instead of reinforcing emotional narratives. Guiding deeper thought means helping people explore possibilities, not locking them into one interpretation. Over time, this practice shapes how you show up in conversations. You begin approaching discussions with curiosity instead of judgment. You become more interested in understanding than in proving your point. This shift gives you a more grounded presence. People feel calmer around you. They feel heard instead of evaluated. And in that environment, they open up naturally. Asking questions that inspire reflection is not about controlling others. It is about supporting their growth, strengthening your relationships, and elevating the quality of your interactions. The most influential people are not the ones who speak endlessly. They are the ones who know how to guide others to their own clarity. When you master the art of thoughtful questioning, your presence becomes a catalyst for insight. You help people see themselves, and in doing so you expand their ability to make wiser decisions, understand their emotions, and move through life with greater awareness. The power of a question lies in its ability to turn a simple conversation into a moment of transformation. When you guide someone to think more deeply, you upgrade the entire direction of their mind. And when a person's mind elevates, their choices follow, their actions shift, their understanding broadens. This is influence in its purest form, quiet, intentional, and profoundly impactful. Number 5. Observe reactions to adjust communication. When you pay close attention to how someone responds, the entire flow of communication changes. It becomes less about delivering a message and more about sensing how it lands. Every expression, every subtle shift in posture, every flicker of hesitation offers information you can use to refine your approach in real time. Instead of pushing through a point because it feels logical to you, you begin noticing what feels meaningful or confusing to them. This awareness transforms a simple exchange into a more effective, more human interaction. You start seeing patterns that weren't obvious before. The way someone leans in when they're intrigued, how their eyebrows draw together when something isn't clear, or how their breathing shifts when they're overwhelmed. These cues tell you when to slow down, when to clarify, when to explore further, and when to redirect entirely. Observing reactions isn't about judgment. It's about curiosity. It's the willingness to step out of your own head and into the dynamic unfolding in front of you. As you speak, you study how your words are absorbed. You notice if someone nods with genuine understanding or simply out of politeness. You see whether their eyes stay focused or begin to drift. Those tiny signals help you adjust your pace, your tone, and even the examples you choose. Communication becomes a living process, one that breathes with the rhythm of the listener's experience. You're no longer reciting information, you're conversing with awareness, shaping each moment to fit their level of engagement. Some reactions are immediate and visible, while others require more patience to identify. A person might respond with silence, not because they disagree, but because they're processing something complex. Instead of assuming they've disengaged, you watch for softer clues, the slight tilt of the head, the thoughtful narrowing of the eyes, the way they rest their hands as if grounding themselves while reflecting. These details encourage you to pause, rather than fill the space with unnecessary explanations. You give them room to think, and in doing so you show respect for their pace. When they finally speak, their words often carry more depth because you allowed the moment to unfold naturally. There are also moments when reactions reveal discomfort. Maybe someone shifts back in their seat, arms tightening across their chest, or their voice softens in a way that signals caution. Instead of ignoring these signs, you adjust. You might ease your tone, offer reassurance, or reframe your point to create a sense of safety. You learn that communication isn't just about clarity, it's about emotional attunement. Noticing when someone feels overwhelmed or pressured allows you to recalibrate before tension builds. You become more compassionate, more intentional, and more effective because you adapt not only to their intellect, but also to their emotional state. Even enthusiasm carries layers worth noticing. When someone becomes energized, their gestures expand, their eyes brighten, and their responses quicken. This is a signal to lean into that momentum, to encourage the thread they're excited about. By reinforcing their interest, you create a collaborative flow where ideas move freely and naturally. The conversation becomes more vibrant, and both of you benefit from the heightened engagement. Recognizing positive responses helps you emphasize what resonates most deeply for them, shaping the direction toward what feels meaningful rather than what feels routine. Adjusting your communication also means refining your vocabulary based on reactions. Sometimes you introduce a concept that makes perfect sense to you, but lands awkwardly with the listener. You notice their confusion, the brief pause before they respond, the slight frown, the way they search for the right follow-up question. Instead of pushing forward, you adjust your language, choosing clearer and more accessible words. You simplify, not because the person is incapable, but because clarity fosters connection. And once the clarity takes hold, you see their posture ease, their questions become sharper, and the conversation becomes smoother. Tone is another tool shaped by observation. Some people respond best to a calm, steady voice that creates a sense of reliability. Others thrive when you amplify energy and enthusiasm. By watching how they react to your tone, you learn when to soften, when to energize, when to emphasize, and when to let your voice settle into a quieter rhythm. You become more precise in your delivery because you anchor it to their internal state. This precision is subtle but powerful. It turns ordinary dialogue into tailored communication. Timing also shifts through observation. When someone appears intrigued, you may extend your explanation a bit further, offering richer examples or diving into additional layers. But when you sense impatience through quick glances away, tightening of the mouth, or restless gestures, you adjust by condensing your message and moving toward the core of what needs to be said. This attentiveness respects their time and maintains their engagement. You show that you're not just speaking, you're responding to the unfolding moment with intention. Over time, observing reactions becomes less like following a checklist and more like reading the ebb and flow of a conversation. You develop an intuitive sense of when to advance and when to retreat. You learn that communication isn't static. It's a continuous exchange where both sides shape the outcome. Each interaction becomes an evolving partnership rather than a one-sided delivery of information. You grow more flexible, more attentive, and more effective because you adapt to the person, not just the topic. As you refine this skill, you start appreciating the richness behind every reaction. You see communication as something that thrives on presence, patience, and perceptive listening. You become someone who not only speaks well, but listens deeply with your eyes, your ears, and your intuition. And through that awareness, every conversation becomes more meaningful, more grounded, and more connected, because you're not just expressing your thoughts, you're shaping them in harmony with the person receiving them. Number 6. Choose timing strategically for impact. Timing is often the invisible force that determines whether your message resonates or dissolves unnoticed. You can deliver the most thoughtful idea, but if the moment is off even slightly, it loses its power. Choosing the right moment requires patience, awareness, and an understanding of how people absorb information when they're mentally open rather than distracted or guarded. When you wait for the right opening, Your words slip into the listener's mind with far greater ease. It's like placing a seed into fertile soil rather than scattering it on dry ground. You recognize that the impact of what you say isn't just in how you phrase it, but in when you choose to release it. Strategic timing begins with sensitivity to emotional climate. Before you speak, you observe whether the person is calm, hurried, tense, or simply not present. If someone is overwhelmed, introducing complex or delicate ideas can create resistance instead of understanding. But when their posture shifts into ease, when their breathing softens, when they seem settled enough to truly hear you, the moment becomes ripe. You lean into that openness not by rushing, but by aligning your message with their capacity to take it in. You allow yourself to move with their state of mind instead of forcing the conversation forward prematurely. Sometimes timing means allowing silence to do its work. You sense that the conversation has reached a natural pause, and instead of filling the space immediately, you hold it. That quiet interval stretches into a small window where attention sharpens. When you eventually speak, the listener is more attuned, more receptive, because the stillness heightened their curiosity. The words that follow land with greater precision, simply because they didn't compete with noise. Silence becomes not an absence of communication, but a deliberate tool that amplifies the moment you choose to speak. There are also moments when timing requires decisiveness. Opportunities appear briefly, and if you hesitate too long, the impact fades. You learn to identify those flashes of willingness, those brief openings when someone is unusually clear-eyed or reflective. In those seconds, you offer what needs to be said, not hurriedly but with confident intention. You meet the moment rather than letting it pass. This balance between patience and decisiveness is delicate, but the more you practice it, the more intuitive it becomes. You start to sense when to wait and when to move forward swiftly. Strategic timing also involves pacing your ideas so they don't overwhelm the listener. Instead of dropping everything at once, you guide them through each layer, watching how they respond. You notice when they lean in, signaling readiness for the next step, and you notice when their gaze drifts, telling you to slow down. You shape the flow of the conversation to match their rhythm. This pacing keeps the exchange steady, preventing confusion while maintaining engagement. The moment you sense they grasp one idea fully, you introduce the next. Each step unfolds naturally, without forcing the process. Emotions play a significant role in timing as well. When someone is frustrated, defensive, or mentally exhausted, even the most reasonable message can be misinterpreted. Waiting for emotions to settle isn't avoidance, it's wisdom. You allow tempers to cool, let energy reset, and approach the conversation when clarity is possible. Speaking at the wrong emotional moment often leads to conflict or misunderstanding, whereas choosing a calmer moment creates space for constructive dialogue. You learn that timing isn't merely logistical, it's emotional attunement. Strategic timing also appears in moments of encouragement. When someone feels doubtful or hesitant, you choose the moment when their uncertainty is most visible. That's when your reassurance carries the most weight. You offer support exactly when it can strengthen them. Encouragement given too early might feel generic, and given too late might feel like an afterthought. But when it aligns with the moment of vulnerability, it becomes transformative. Your timing tells them you truly see them, and that recognition deepens trust. In challenging conversations, timing becomes even more delicate. You might need to deliver a difficult truth or address a sensitive subject. These moments require not just choosing the right time, but creating it. You set the stage by ensuring privacy, calm, and focus. You speak when distractions fade and when the person appears grounded enough to receive what you have to share. This preparation isn't manipulation, it's respect. It shows you care about how the message affects them, not just about delivering it. There are also times when the best timing involves delaying your response. Someone might make a remark that provokes a reaction in you, and your instinct might be to respond immediately. But strategic timing teaches you to pause, breathe, and allow your thoughts to settle before speaking. That short delay reshapes your message, making it more thoughtful and less reactive. It protects the relationship and preserves clarity. It turns instinctive reaction into intentional communication. Strategic timing applies not only to serious conversations, but also to moments of inspiration. When you recognize someone is energized, hopeful, or curious, you use that window to introduce ideas that require imagination or motivation. Positive emotion creates momentum, and by speaking into that momentum, you encourage deeper engagement. You don't let the moment slip away, you build on it, guiding the conversation toward discovery or action. Eventually, choosing timing becomes second nature. You start noticing the subtle shifts in atmosphere, the changes in expression, the quiet signals that someone is ready or not ready to receive your words. You become more patient, more deliberate, and more attuned to the unseen cues that influence understanding. This attentiveness gives your communication a sense of intention that others feel even before you speak. As you refine this skill, you discover that timing is not just about communicating more effectively, it's about respecting the conversation as a shared experience. You recognize that the right message delivered at the right moment has the power to shape decisions, clarify misunderstandings, and deepen connections. You begin treating each moment with care, understanding that every pause, every word, and every silence plays a role in creating impact. And with that awareness, your communication becomes not only clearer but more meaningful, because you speak in harmony with the moment rather than against it. Number 7. Replace chatter with meaningful silence. Silence carries a strength that words often lack, and when used with intention, it becomes one of the most powerful tools for influence. Many people rush to fill every quiet moment, believing that constant dialogue keeps them relevant or engaged. But true confidence expresses itself not through endless speech, but through the ability to remain quiet without discomfort. Meaningful silence is not the absence of expression, it is the presence of awareness, purpose, and restraint. It allows room for reflection, both for you and for the person you are communicating with. When you stop scattering unnecessary words, your presence grows heavier, your thoughts grow sharper, and your influence deepens naturally. Replacing chatter with silence begins with understanding why people overtalk in the first place. Some fill the air to avoid awkwardness, others to appear knowledgeable, and many simply speak out of habit. These impulses create noise rather than connection. When you begin to observe these tendencies in yourself, you gain the ability to interrupt them. You become more selective about what deserves to be spoken and what is better left unspoken. This shift is not about withholding expression, but about elevating the value of your voice so that when you choose to speak, others listen. Silence grants you space to think clearly before responding. When you pause instead of jumping into the conversation, your mind organizes thoughts with greater precision. You notice the subtle layers of what was said, the emotional tone behind the words, and the intention beneath the surface. That clarity allows you to respond more thoughtfully rather than reacting automatically. People sense the difference between a reflexive reply and a considered response, and they trust the latter far more. The moment you stop competing with the noise and begin allowing silence to do its work, your words gain depth and weight. Meaningful silence also invites others to express themselves more fully. When you don't rush in to fill gaps, people feel encouraged to continue sharing. They sense that you are not waiting for your turn to speak, but genuinely absorbing what they say. This kind of presence builds trust quickly because it shows that you value the conversation more than the sound of your own voice. The more you offer space, the more people open up, revealing insights they might never have voiced if you were constantly speaking. Silence becomes a bridge rather than a barrier, inviting connection instead of distancing it. Another advantage of purposeful silence is the emotional balance it creates within you. When you stop over-talking, your internal state becomes calmer. You conserve mental and emotional energy, rather than scattering it across countless unnecessary words. This calmness radiates outward, influencing the tone of your interactions. People instinctively relax around someone who carries stillness, rather than agitation. Your grounded presence becomes a source of stability, and others begin to mirror that calmness in your interactions. In situations where tension runs high, silence becomes a stabilizing force. Instead of escalating conflict through rushed explanations or defensive comments, you remain quiet long enough to prevent emotion from dictating your words. This pause allows you to assess the real issue before responding. Silence gives you time to strip away irritation, frustration, or fear, leaving only clarity behind. When you speak from that clarity, your message becomes more effective and far less likely to be misunderstood. Silence, when used wisely, diffuses tension far more effectively than hurried reasoning ever could. Silence also strengthens your self-discipline. In a world where constant communication is expected and rewarded, choosing quiet requires restraint. That restraint becomes a practice of self-control that carries into every part of your life. When you master the urge to speak unnecessarily, you simultaneously strengthen the ability to master impulsive behavior, emotional reactions, and scattered attention. Each moment of intentional silence reinforces the mindset that not every impulse deserves action. Over time, this discipline shapes a calmer, more deliberate way of being that influences how others perceive you. Meaningful silence enhances your ability to observe. While others are busy crafting responses or dominating the conversation, you are noticing tone shifts, subtle expressions, and unsaid concerns. This heightened awareness gives you an advantage because you see what others miss. You become attuned to changes in mood, unspoken resistance, and quiet enthusiasm. These observations guide your communication more accurately than assumptions ever could. When you speak, you address the actual need rather than the surface conversation, and this level of precision strengthens your influence. Another gift of silence is that it protects you from unnecessary misunderstandings. Many conflicts arise not from intention, but from excessive talking that clouds the message. When you keep your words measured and purposeful, the likelihood of confusion decreases. You simplify your communication by removing what doesn't matter. People appreciate this clarity because it eliminates guesswork. They know your words are deliberate and trustworthy. Silence becomes the filter that removes everything unessential so only the meaningful parts remain. There is also the power of silence in leadership. Leaders who speak only when necessary command more respect than those who constantly fill the air. Their words feel valuable because they are not given lightly. When they choose to speak, people assume the message carries purpose. Silence creates an air of authority, not through dominance but through composed presence. It shows that you are not driven by ego or insecurity, but by intention. This kind of leadership inspires confidence because people trust someone who doesn't allow noise to dictate their energy. Silence can also deepen your personal relationships. When you stop trying to impress others with constant commentary, you create room for genuine connection. Friends, partners, and colleagues appreciate the presence of someone who listens more than they speak. Silence allows you to feel the emotional current of a moment, instead of drowning it with commentary. It offers space for vulnerability, for reflection, and for deeper understanding. When people feel heard and supported, relationships strengthen naturally, without force or effort. Replacing chatter with silence does not mean withdrawing from conversation or becoming distant. It means choosing your moments carefully so that your participation holds meaning. You speak when you have something valuable to add, and you remain silent when your words would only clutter the moment. This balance brings harmony to communication, allowing each exchange to carry greater purpose. You begin to realize that silence is not emptiness, it is presence without interruption. Over time, meaningful silence becomes a natural part of how you move through the world. You no longer feel compelled to prove yourself through constant explanation. You communicate with intention, listen with patience, and observe with clarity. Your influence grows not because you speak more, but because you speak with depth. People recognize that your silence is not withdrawal, it is awareness. And when you finally choose to speak, your words rise above the noise, carrying a strength that chatter could never achieve. Number 8. Communicate authority through calm brevity. Authority is not something you declare, it is something you convey through the way you carry yourself, the clarity of your thoughts, and the steadiness of your communication. Calm brevity is one of the most effective ways to express this kind of authority. When you speak with measured words and deliberate ease, you send a clear message that you understand what matters and what does not. You show that you do not need to overwhelm others with explanations or impress them with elaborate phrasing. Instead, you trust the strength of your message and the stability of your presence. This quiet confidence draws people in with far more force than loud declarations ever could. Calm brevity begins with internal steadiness. When your mind is clear and your emotions are grounded, your words naturally become more focused. You no longer feel the urge to add unnecessary detail just to feel heard. Instead, you choose language that reflects your composure. People sense this groundedness immediately. They can feel when someone speaks from a place of balance rather than anxiety. Even simple statements gain weight because they come from a centered state rather than a scattered one. This is why calm individuals often influence others without raising their voice. Their presence speaks first, their message follows. Communicating authority through brevity also means removing verbal clutter. Many people fill their speech with extra phrases that weaken their point, apologetic qualifiers, repetitive explanations, or long-winded stories that dilute the core message. When you strip away these excesses, your communication becomes sharper. The listener no longer has to search for the meaning beneath layers of unnecessary language. They receive the essence immediately. This clarity creates an impression of competence, and competence naturally commands respect. The more precise your words, the more credible your voice becomes. Another aspect of calm brevity is respecting the listener's time and focus. When you speak concisely, you show that you value efficiency. People appreciate when someone can express meaningful ideas without demanding excessive attention. They respond by giving more weight to what is said because they know it comes without waste. Brevity does not mean speaking less for the sake of being short. It means giving exactly what the moment requires and nothing more. This balanced delivery signals discipline, and discipline is a hallmark of authority. Calm communication also influences how others experience the interaction. When your tone remains steady, it helps regulate the emotional atmosphere. Even in stressful situations, a calm speaker sets a stable tone that others instinctively follow. Your words carry an unspoken message. There is no need for panic, no need for urgency, no need for chaos. This quiet steadiness becomes a form of leadership because it creates a sense of safety. People trust someone who does not crumble under tension. They pay closer attention to someone who maintains clarity even when the environment is uncertain. Brevity works hand in hand with this calm presence. Long-winded explanations often arise from fear. Fear of being misunderstood, fear of being judged, fear of seeming unprepared. When you let go of that fear, your communication becomes lean and direct. You no longer try to convince people through volume. Instead, you rely on clarity. Others sense that you speak from certainty rather than insecurity, and that certainty builds influence. A brief, well-structured message communicates far more conviction than a lengthy attempt to prove a point. Calm brevity also gives your message room to breathe. When you speak concisely, the listener has space to absorb each idea. They can reflect, interpret, and engage without feeling overwhelmed. This space enhances comprehension and encourages deeper connection. People remember messages that were delivered with precision because their minds were not flooded with excess. Your words settle more deeply when they arrive without noise. Another strength of calm brevity lies in the way it frames your identity. People often evaluate credibility, not just by the content of your words but by the manner in which you deliver them. When you speak with composure and conciseness, you appear disciplined, deliberate, and self-assured. You show that you do not rely on volume to express importance. You do not rely on drama to hold attention. You simply speak from a place of clarity, and that alone becomes a signature of strength. This combination of composure and precision shapes how others perceive your leadership before you even finish your sentence. Calm brevity also strengthens decision-making. When you discipline your communication, you discipline your thinking. You become more selective about what deserves expression, which forces you to refine your ideas. You begin to articulate only what aligns with your values and your purpose. This process removes distractions from your mind, making your choices more intentional. With clarity comes confidence, and with confidence comes influence. People naturally gravitate toward those who communicate with refined thought because it suggests depth of understanding. Another benefit of calm brevity is that it creates an atmosphere where others can contribute. When you refrain from dominating the conversation, you leave space for collaboration. Others feel more comfortable sharing their thoughts because the room is not filled with your voice. This encourages initiative, creativity, and engagement. People feel respected when someone communicates with focus instead of overwhelming the conversation. This respect strengthens relationships and makes your presence more impactful. Calm brevity also protects you from unnecessary conflict. Many disagreements escalate because people speak impulsively or excessively. When your communication is concise and grounded, you avoid feeding emotional tension. You choose words that clarify rather than provoke. You express your perspective without aggression or defensiveness. This steadiness diffuses heated situations and prevents misunderstandings. Your authority grows because people trust your ability to remain composed when others would react impulsively. Over time, the practice of calm brevity becomes part of your character. You recognize when to speak, when to pause, and when silence expresses more strength than words. You develop a rhythm of communication that mirrors self-mastery. The more you refine this skill, the clearer your influence becomes. You no longer chase authority, you embody it. You no longer seek validation through speech, your presence validates itself. People begin to anticipate your words because they know they carry value, not volume. Calm brevity is a discipline that transforms both communication and identity. It teaches you to honor your words, to protect your energy, and to communicate with purpose. The world is filled with noise, and those who speak with clarity rise above it. When you choose your words carefully and deliver them with steady composure, you demonstrate the kind of authority that requires no introduction. It is quiet, intentional, and unmistakably powerful. Through this calm and concise communication, your influence deepens, not because you speak more, but because you speak with a presence that cannot be ignored. Number 9. Let body language reinforce confidence. Confidence is not only heard in your voice, it is seen long before a single word leaves your mouth. Your body speaks constantly whether you intend it to or not. Every movement, posture, and expression sends signals that others interpret instantly. When your body language aligns with inner steadiness, it reinforces your presence without effort. People naturally trust someone who carries themselves with clarity and calm assurance. They respond differently to a person whose physical demeanor reflects self-respect and quiet strength. This is why mastering body language is essential if you want your influence to extend beyond what you say. The foundation of confident body language begins with posture. A balanced, upright stance communicates dignity and readiness. When you stand or sit with your shoulders open and your chest lifted gently, you send the message that you feel grounded in yourself. This posture is not about exaggeration or inflated power. It is about staying aligned, present, and attentive. Slouched or closed-off positions often give the impression of uncertainty, even if your intentions are strong. By maintaining open alignment, you show that you are receptive, clear-minded, and comfortable in your space. This subtle detail shapes the entire dynamic of an interaction, because it sets the tone before any conversation begins. Your gaze also plays a central role in conveying confidence. Eye contact, when used with balance, creates connection without force. A steady gaze shows that you are engaged and unafraid of being seen. It communicates sincerity and stability. You are not trying to overpower or dominate, you are simply present. When your eyes wander restlessly, others sense distraction or discomfort. When your gaze holds gently, others feel acknowledged and respected. This steady attention shows that you are anchored in the moment and secure enough to meet the other person without hesitation. The way you move reflects your level of self-command as well. Confident movement is smooth, deliberate, and unhurried. Rushed or fidgety gestures can reveal nervousness, while forced stillness can appear rigid. True confidence exists in natural balance. Your steps are steady, your transitions are calm, and your actions appear intentional. Moving with purpose signals that you are not overwhelmed by the environment, but fully in control of your pace. When you navigate a space with ease, you create an atmosphere of assurance that others instinctively respond to. Your hands communicate as much as your face. Many people gesture excessively when anxious, scattering energy in every direction. Others keep their hands hidden or tense, signaling discomfort. When your hands rest naturally or move with clear intention, they add strength to your message. A simple, steady gesture can reinforce clarity without drawing unnecessary attention. Your hands should support your words, not overshadow them. Controlled gestures convey thoughtfulness and discipline, helping others perceive you as someone who chooses expression with awareness rather than impulse. Your facial expression contributes to your authority as well. A calm and relaxed face suggests steadiness, even when navigating difficult conversations. Tension around the jaw or brow often reveals internal strain, while a composed expression communicates resilience. When your face reflects gentleness and strength at the same time, people feel more comfortable approaching you. They sense that you are not carrying agitation into the interaction. A composed expression also amplifies the power of your pauses and highlights the sincerity of your words. You become someone who carries quiet certainty rather than emotional volatility. Breathing influences your body language more than most people realize. When your breathing is steady and deep, your entire presence feels anchored. Your voice becomes clearer, your movements smoother, and your posture more stable. Shallow breaths often signal anxiety or impatience, which can be sensed even without conscious awareness. When your breath stays calm, you project self-control before you even speak. This inner rhythm governs the external cues that others interpret as confidence. A steady breath grounds you, helping your body reflect the composure you want to embody. Another essential aspect of confident body language is the way you occupy space. Someone who is comfortable with themselves does not shrink or withdraw physically. They take up an appropriate amount of space without trying to dominate. Standing too small can appear timid, while standing too large can appear aggressive. The balance lies in owning your space with relaxed presence. When you enter a room with a sense of calm ownership, moving with intention, greeting others with ease, and positioning yourself in a stable posture, you radiate influence before the conversation even unfolds. Stillness is another powerful tool. While movement reveals energy, stillness reveals control. When you can remain still during key moments, you demonstrate that you do not feel pressured to react impulsively. This stillness is not rigid, but quiet and composed. It allows your message to settle and your presence to speak for itself. When others feel your controlled stillness, they instinctively interpret it as authority. It signals that you are not driven by nervous energy, but by deliberate thought. The alignment between your body language and your internal state matters greatly. People notice when your words say one thing but your body implies another. If you speak confidently but your shoulders curl inward, your message loses credibility. If you claim calmness while your hands shake or your voice trembles, the listener senses the inconsistency. True influence arises when your physical cues match your inner steadiness. That harmony creates a powerful authenticity that people trust immediately. When you embody your message physically, you become far more persuasive than words alone can achieve. Your body language also sets boundaries without needing to verbalize them. A stable stance shows that you won't be pushed easily. A calm face tells others that emotional manipulation will not sway you. A relaxed posture makes it clear you do not feel threatened. These nonverbal signals protect your energy and prevent others from overstepping. By carrying yourself with composed assurance, you teach people how to approach you. You show them that you value respect, clarity, and balanced communication. In addition, confident body language helps you guide conversations more effectively. When you lean slightly forward, it shows engagement. When you sit back with relaxed posture, it signals contemplation. Small shifts communicate volumes. You can redirect tension, encourage openness, or create space for reflection without needing to say a word. Your body becomes a silent instrument that shapes the flow of interaction. Those who master this skill hold tremendous influence because they steer conversations with subtlety rather than force. As you refine this aspect of communication, you begin to notice how your presence shifts. People treat you with more respect, speak to you with more attentiveness, and listen to you with greater interest. They sense the stability in your demeanor and respond to it. Your influence grows not because you demand it, but because you embody it. You show through your posture, your movements, and your stillness that confidence is not a performance, it is a way of being. Over time, your body language becomes a natural extension of your inner strength, reinforcing your words without effort. This alignment transforms every interaction, allowing you to communicate authority in a way that is calm, sincere, and unmistakably powerful. Number 10. Speak only when value rises. When you choose to speak only when your words add genuine value, your presence begins to carry a weight that cannot be faked. People sense the difference between someone who talks to fill empty space and someone who contributes because they have something worth saying. This shift doesn't happen overnight, but it becomes a defining part of your communication once you realize how powerful well-timed speech can be. Imagine entering a room where everyone is tossing ideas around rapidly, each voice blending into the next. The person who listens first, observes quietly, and waits until the right moment will often command the most attention without exerting any obvious effort. Their contribution lands differently, their perspective feels more intentional, and their steadiness creates a contrast that makes others naturally lean in. Speaking only when necessary is not about withholding or appearing distant. It's about elevating the standard of your communication so that your voice becomes associated with clarity, relevance, and impact. But to do this well, you have to let go of the urge to constantly respond. Many people speak as a reflex. They react instead of evaluate. They add noise because silence makes them uncomfortable. That discomfort creates habits that weaken their influence. Rambling to appear informed, over-explaining to seek validation, or speaking prematurely just to fill the gap before someone else does. When you break away from that impulse, you begin cultivating an internal filter, one that asks, does this contribute something meaningful? Does it move the conversation forward? Does it clarify something that's? If the answer is no, you allow the moment to pass. What's remarkable is how liberating this becomes. You discover that conversations don't need your constant participation. And by stepping back, you create more room to think, refine, and deliver only what's truly needed. Over time, people start noticing your restraint. They see you listening more deeply. They see you speaking less frequently, but more intentionally. That contrast alone changes how your voice is received. When you do speak, you're not rushing. You're not competing for air. You're offering something that feels thought through. And because your contributions aren't scattered across every moment, each statement naturally carries more gravity. This doesn't mean you have to be slow or overly formal. It simply means that your threshold for speaking becomes higher. You're no longer driven by impulse. You're driven by purpose, and that purpose builds an unspoken authority. This approach also sharpens your ability to analyze situations before responding. Instead of jumping into discussions half-formed, you use silence as a buffer to examine context, observe reactions, and understand the motives behind what's being said. That reflection gives you an edge. You become the person who identifies the missing angle, the inconsistency, the opportunity others missed because they were too busy talking. This doesn't require extraordinary intelligence, just a commitment to stay quiet until your thoughts reach a level where they genuinely enhance the moment. When others realize that you consistently offer something valuable, they begin anticipating your input. They pause when you lean forward slightly. They hold space for you without you having to ask. That anticipation is one of the most understated forms of influence. Another remarkable effect of speaking only when your message adds value is how it reshapes your internal dialogue. You stop feeling the pressure to impress with quantity and instead focus on the quality of your reasoning. Conversations become purposeful rather than performative. You become more present. You pick up subtle cues, tone shifts, hesitation, tension, enthusiasm, that others overlook because their minds are already preparing their next sentence. This heightened awareness allows you to respond with precision rather than noise, and because your timing becomes sharper, your words land at moments when they are most needed, not when they are most expected. This strategy also strengthens your relationships. People trust those who speak with clarity. They respect those who don't dominate conversations with unnecessary commentary. They appreciate those who listen first. When you consistently speak in ways that show you understand the moment, you earn credibility without demanding it. And because your communication carries intention, your message often resonates more deeply. You create space for others to express themselves fully. And when you do enter the conversation, your presence feels supportive rather than intrusive. This balance makes your interactions richer and more genuine. Learning to speak only when value rises also teaches you patience. There will be moments when ideas form quickly in your mind and you feel eager to contribute. Yet the conversation hasn't reached the point where your words would create true impact. You learn to wait, you learn to refine, and often by the time the right moment arrives, your message has evolved into something more precise and more powerful than it would have been if you rushed to deliver it. This timing demonstrates maturity. It signals that you operate from intention, not urgency. The discipline to pause before speaking even sharpens the physical delivery of your communication. Your tone becomes calmer, your cadence steadier. You eliminate filler words because you're not scrambling to keep up with your thoughts. You speak at a pace that conveys confidence rather than haste. And because your mind isn't scattered across multiple half-formed ideas, your sentences become clearer, cleaner, and easier for others to absorb. People may not consciously dissect these details, but they feel the difference. They sense the calm, they sense the deliberation, and they respond by giving you more attention. In many ways, speaking only when value rises is a form of self-mastery. It requires awareness of your impulses, discipline in your actions, and trust in your ability to contribute meaningfully when it truly matters. It also requires courage, courage to let silence sit, courage to resist social pressure to overtalk, and courage to believe that your value doesn't come from constant verbal output, but from the strength of your insight. This shift rewires how you interact with the world. You stop racing to keep up with the pace of other people's conversations, and instead create a rhythm of your own, measured, thoughtful, effective. Ultimately, the more you practice this principle, the more powerful your communication becomes. Your words feel deliberate, your presence feels intentional, your contributions feel refined, and slowly, without striving for it, you build a kind of quiet authority that people recognize instinctively. It's not loud, it's not flashy, it's not forceful, but it is unmistakably strong.